interviews. So, how's everybody doing? Good? Everybody almost done with their personal statements? Some people are. I've seen some. So you guys are doing a good job at getting things moving. That's a great process. Any questions overall? Certainly I'll be, around today quite a bit and tomorrow on Friday. I want to draw your attention to a visitor we have coming Friday, Cody Sanders. Cody is a fourth-year medical student and just matched with neurology. He hails from rural Utah. He went to the University of Utah Medical School, matched with Brown for neurology, and he'll be here on Friday to chat with you a little bit. Tomorrow we have Whitney Johnson, who is the Director of Admissions for Rocky Vista College of Osteopathic Medicine, talking to you about how you communicate with grad schools, things like that. Yeah?
So as far as our personal statements and experiences, I know we said don't use the word I. That was only the experience.
Not in the personal statement. You can use
You
can use it in your personal statement, and then if you're doing the MD application, you have to choose 3 of your most memorable or transformative experiences. You can revert to sentence format and try and use I there occasionally. Occasionally. Yeah. Did that answer your question? Okay. So then, in terms of helping you edit your stuff over the next several weeks, our staff is around to help you with that. The Writing Center is available to help you edit. Some of our peer mentors have offered editing assistance to you. Take advantage of those via email over the next couple of weeks. Casey LeBoy will be leaving this Friday to take the Dominican Republic trip all next week, so she'll be gone. I'm here next week until Wednesday evening, and then I'm taking the group to Nepal and gone for a few weeks. I can usually email and say, this looks good, this looks bad, but it's hard to edit on my phone. But you've got access to Amy Humphreys, and Natalie is an excellent editor. Use their services. And then certainly we're available to you all summer as well. But hopefully by June you're hitting submit. Hopefully then by July you're getting secondaries, if not sooner. And please use our services to help you edit your secondaries. You should put as much time and energy into your secondaries or supplementals as you are putting into your primary. But you'll want to strategize your secondaries. You want to strategize, and in your secondaries, you want to send back the secondaries that you really want to go to first. Because you may get a slew of secondaries all at one time, and you're like, oh my goodness, how in the world am I going to finish all these secondaries at one time? So you want to strategize those, and you want to send those back according to, obviously, your first choices, because you want to get early interviews with those schools, okay? MD schools typically don't interview until later in the season, and so I would send back as many of your DO applications, like prioritize your DO if you're MD and DO, and then you can hold off on some of your MD secondaries if you want to. So ask our help in terms of strategizing your priorities. So this morning we're going to talk a little bit about the interview process and what to do after that, just to kind of get you in that mindset. I know you guys are all still just thinking about getting this submitted, but we want to really go through with you what you'll be doing afterwards. So you're going to retake your entrance exam. Many of you are studying right now to retake your entrance exam or for your first take at it. There is no penalty to retake your entrance exam. But if you are pharmacy, PA, PT, if you're doing the GRE, you probably won't need to retake your entrance exam. You just need to get above the 50th percentile on those exams. Same thing for MCAT if you want to do podiatry. So if you're really struggling with your MCAT score and cannot get it above a 500, and you don't want to push off another year, then let's chat about podiatry. Podiatry is an amazing career where you could do surgery, you can make really good money, and we've seen students get into podiatry schools with 495s, so it could be a good option for you. If you don't want to retake your entrance exam, for some of you, retaking that entrance exam is a heavy weight in terms of thinking about it, and it's like, you know, at the end of the day, I may not want to do this. Optometry school, you take the OAT exam, which is a fairly straightforward, easier exam. And for dental, you take the DAT exam. And for that, we know you've got to hit about a 19 or 20, depending on where your GPA is. So happy to chat with you about retaking your entrance exam. Somebody get scores come back today. Who's getting scores today? MCAT score release is today for some of you. So that may be a critical time. And so then we also may talk to you about going to a post-bac. So then you prepare for your interviews. We're going to be doing an interview boot camp later this summer. I think it's full, but we are going to be offering a second one where you can experience a full day experience of what an interview is going to feel like. Also on Friday, Greg Powell is going to come from our business department and talk to you about what to wear in an interview. Also some interview skills that you might want to think through. And we're happy to coach you through that interview process. I've even had students send me pictures of suits that they're going to buy in advance. You want to make sure that you are dressed well for those interviews. It's not time to wear a suit that you've had with you for the last 2 years in a developing country on a mission or something. It's time to invest in a new suit that fits you well, that makes you look good. What you wear is never going to get you the position, but what you wear can detract from you getting the position, if that makes sense. So also continuing your prerequisite requirements. Update your schools. We're going to have a whole slide about updating it. Keep doing things. This is the problem I see with a lot of students. Once they hit submit, they stop doing activities. Okay? What happens if you don't get in this cycle? You need to have new activities. When you send in your secondary supplemental, you can talk about new activities or continued hours of activities. And certainly when you go to interview, you can say, since I submitted my secondary, I'm doing this. Okay? So keep up the activity level that you've been doing for the last 3, 4, 5 years. That's where we see students who have to reapply 3 times, is because that first year when they sat out, they didn't do anything to change their application. And if you've applied to schools, they do not penalize you if you have to reapply. If you got denied at a school your first time out, don't think, oh, I'm not going to apply to that school again. Reapply. Because they're going to look, and they may even compare your application to see how different it is. What have you been doing since you reapplied? Some of your applications will even say, you know, have you applied here previously? So pay attention to that. Keep doing things. Engage your brain. Some of our more prestigious schools like to see that you're involved in what they would call academic rigor in the year before matriculating to med school, dental school, pharmacy school, whatever. You just want to work and make money, right? A lot of you who are taking gap years. So you got to figure out a way to keep your brain fresh. The literature shows that you will have a more successful first year in grad school if your brain is fresh. So if that means that you work in an academic setting, if you're going to be tutoring, but I implore you to keep up your academic rigor in some way. I once had a student who had a gap year, and she ended up teaching for the Kaplan program on the MCAT prep program. So, you know, check with Altius. They're hiring people all the time. You can teach something else. Learn Spanish. Do something to keep your brain alive in that gap year, okay? That's really, really important. We're going to talk about updating your institutions, complete your secondaries in a timely manner. Be professional at all times. I like to talk about this a little bit in terms of your communication with grad schools. You're going to hear a little bit more about this from Whitney Johnson tomorrow. Never start an email with, hey, so-and-so. Please don't do that. That's not very professional email. In fact, oh my gosh, I got an email I sent to Casey and Amy the other day. Somebody wanting to do some writing for us, and they started out the email, hey, Rita Osborne. You know, it was like a MailChimp and a mail merge, but the salutation was hey. So be professional at all times in all your communications with them. Also, be professional in your social media. I encourage you to have some footprint out there in terms of social media. If I'm interviewing a student, what's one of the first things I do after I read his application, her application? I check them out on Facebook. I just do, okay? It's what we do. I check them out on LinkedIn. Do you all have a LinkedIn profile? Why not? You should have a LinkedIn profile. You should have some semblance of social media. Why? Why do you think?
Gives an idea of what you're like outside of academia and outside of academia scope, because you might not the best face for them, but what are you really like?
Exactly. Exactly. It gives them an insight into who you truly are. Now, that could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing, depending on what's on your social media. So, a strategy is make sure your social media is fairly cleaned up, okay? Try not to post political things. Try not to post pictures of you out drinking or things like that. You can set your social media so if people are tagging you, you can approve it before it shows in your feed. What does not having a social media presence say to people? What does that say to a dean of admissions or somebody that's interviewing you? They can't find you anywhere out there. Do you think it's a red flag? It's a little bit of a red flag. Do you get why? You're a social media culture, okay? I guarantee almost all of you probably have a Facebook of some sort to keep up with grandma. So use that to your advantage. There's a strategy there when you populate it with some good stuff. Okay? Yeah?
Do you know if they have ways to view your time even if it's private?
No, they cannot view it if it's private. No. So I encourage you make some of it not so private. Make some things not so private. Yeah. It helps give them an insight into who you are. So that if they're interviewing and you're on the fence, okay, then a positive reaction, a positive first impression may go a long way. Okay? We're talking about strategy here. Okay? But be professional at all times in those things that you're doing, okay? I love this.
Yeah, Amy talked about this a little. She did the beginning of the slide yesterday.
Oh, we did talk about this?
She did, yeah. She just didn't do any interview tips.
Oh, got it.
So
did we went through this?
she did this one, not the whole slide.
Okay. Do you have any questions about that? You don't want to be in that situation. Did we talk about this one?
Nope.
Okay. So you have some options once you've hit submit, once you get a secondary. As you know, many of you will never even hear from these schools ever again. They don't have to get in touch with you to tell you the status of your application. They don't have to decline you, reject you. They can just leave you hanging. And you will be left hanging at many schools. Some students find that that is the hardest thing because you never hear from them. So you can communicate with the school in a strategic way. Whitney will chat with you a little bit about how her school handles that. But you do have the opportunity to call the admissions office. An admissions office at a school is there to help you. Even if you have questions in your secondaries, please call them. Okay? Emailing them may not work. Your email may get lost with 100 other emails. Pick up the phone and call the admissions folks in an office if you have a specific question, especially if it's in your top 3 or 4 or 5 schools. You may even want to get to know that admissions person. You may want to go take a tour at some of your top schools this summer and get to know somebody in the admissions department. Okay? You can update your application with a school on a case-by-case basis. Each school has specific policies for how they handle updates. So that means if a school says, we don't want to hear from you, after you hit submit, you've submitted your secondary, you are not allowed any updates, that's their prerogative. They can say that. Some schools don't say anything, and that's where you're kind of left hanging. So you can certainly update them. Certainly at the end of a semester, if you've taken coursework, you will want to update that school and say, I've just received my new grades. How would you like me to get those to you? And oh, by the way, the research project that I mentioned in my application just got published. Okay? So you're not going to update them on more trivial things like, oh, I did 20 more hours of service. Okay? But you could update them when something pivotal comes up. Say you get certified as an EMT. Obviously, something happens with your research project that's momentous. Things like that, you can update the school when that happens. Otherwise, I recommend that you update at the end of the semester. Hopefully you've got new transcripts or things like that to update them with. You can send them a letter, you can send them an email. And then, when you get to the point where you have been accepted or waitlisted, you can send something as well, stating to them that they are your top choice of schools. Okay, schools love to hear that. They want to know why you are choosing their school. Typically, it's a match with their mission or who they are or something like that. Try not to say you're located geographically in a place where I want to go explore, because that doesn't really resonate with them. But you need to dig deep into their school and find out why. We have an amazing cohort of alumni that are out there at a lot of schools. In fact, we'll be sharing with you today, when we talk about school selection, a list of where we have had alumni. One of the things you can do, even in your secondaries, is contact one of our alums and ask them, what do you like best about this school? Then in your secondary, you say, you know, I talked with so-and-so, and they loved this about your school, and I come from the same type of undergrad institution that they did, and they told me how powerful your school is in whatever aspect you want to talk about. And then certainly when you do get an interview at a school, use our alumni pipeline. They sometimes will even let you stay at their house if that's convenient for them, but they certainly are happy to meet with you and share a lot about their school, and it's okay to use that in your interview. Okay? So it shows that you've dug a little deeper than the average student in terms of cultivating your relationship. And again, don't send them anything if they explicitly say they don't accept additional materials. Yeah, so these are the three possible options that you have. Well, the other would be nothing. You might not hear anything from a school. But with many of the schools that have rolling admissions, you may hear as soon as, I've had students leave an interview and hear from the admissions committee that day. Okay? So it happens. Some schools you may hear in a couple days, some it may be a week, some it may be, unfortunately with the University of Utah, months and months and months that you are waiting, and it's painful. So every school is different in terms of how they handle your acceptances. Every school also has specific policies about what happens after acceptance. Typically, you have to pay a deposit by a certain date to reserve your seat. Okay? You could get denied. If you get a denial from a school, there's not really much you can do. You didn't fit their mission. Okay? Or you could be put on wait list. You can even be put on a wait list for an interview now. So you may get an email that says you're on a wait list for an interview. That's when I encourage you to find out about that school's policy of updates. You know, because your update may at least help you get an interview. Okay? Questions about these positions that you'll all probably be in next year, or how to handle them? The next thing that happens is that we want to talk about, if you're waitlisted or receive no interviews, come and see us. Some schools have some policies that will let us find out if you did interview in a school, what happened in that interview. We can get feedback for you. University of Utah has a very specific, University of Utah Med School has a very specific policy. It says you fill out a form, you sign off, that I can access the comments from your interview if, and only if, you have not received an acceptance at any other school. Okay? If you've received an acceptance at any other school, they could care less, because they know, of the 4,000 applications they get, many of those are qualified for seats at other schools. Okay? But if you did not get an interview at any other school, you can sign off a form that says your pre-med advisor can access information for you on your behalf. Okay? What Dean Chan will tell me is, you probably know why that student didn't get in here, or didn't get in anywhere else. So we would ask them to see your actual application so we can pick through and make sure you've not had a red flag in your application or things like that. Oftentimes when we sign off on your application, we say, you look golden. There are some pieces that we don't see. We don't see your letters of recommendation. And I will be honest with you, I have had faculty tank students in those letters of recommendation. It happens. Dean Chan, I have a student of mine who is now in residency, thank goodness. She got accepted to the University of Utah. But he called me because her application and her other letters were so different from one letter from an SUU faculty person who really did tank her. He didn't think she could do it. And he said so in that letter. And luckily, Dean Chan called me, and I said, I think you should take a chance on the student. He did, and by golly, she has matched with residency. And I know, it's pretty amazing. But be careful. That's why I always tell you, ask in a certain way. Do you feel comfortable writing a strong letter of recommendation for me? Doesn't guarantee. Then the other thing we don't see is, your interview. How did your interview go? Did you have a big faux pas in that interview? So practice your interview skills. And we can help you with that. So there are some things that you can do if you are waitlisted or you receive no interviews. You can add schools. You can add DO schools up until January. And so if you're not getting any traction, you may even think about if you've not tossed out a DO application, you may toss out a DO application or add more schools in. You can certainly do that. Consider other options. You can do a Caribbean medical school as late as January or February of this upcoming year and submit an application for them. They have people that will prey on you because their flush out rate is about 30% of the students that actually start there don't finish. Okay? An MD school has about a 1 to 2% flush out rate, and a DO school has about a 3 to 5% flush out rate. That means students start but don't finish. And the other graduate programs are probably a 5 to 10%. People who start that school don't finish, and you don't want to be in that situation. The Caribbean schools do not have as much support as the U.S. medical schools, but sometimes for students it's an option. This year we have 2 students that have chosen to go to Caribbean offshore schools. Retake your entrance exam and keep waiting. We want to cover traffic rules real quickly. So traffic rules, and you'll hear this term, or you can Google traffic rules for each of your classes. There are rules that say how you deal with your acceptances. Trust me, many of you may actually pay deposits for multiple schools. So you may have 3 or 4 deposits out there, 3 or 4 seats that you're holding in this cycle. So you go on an early interview, you get a seat at a school, you got to take the first seat because you need a seat, right? But then you're going to interview strategically at your favorite schools. And so you may end up losing that seat. So you can hold multiple seats up until a certain time and day. okay? And that's governed by your CAS. So you can hold multiple seats up until that time. After that, you can only hold one seat because they're trying to jockey and figure out filling out their wait lists and things like that. So that's what's called traffic rules. Make sure you're aware of the traffic rules for your CAS, how that's going to affect you. We're happy to coach you through that. You can hold one seat at a DO school and one seat at an MD school. The CASs do not talk to each other. Okay? So they can't see that you've got a seat at one school if you're waiting for something else. But if it's within that CAS, and this pretty much only applies to medical, although it could apply to dental as well if you're doing Texas, they can't see outside the CAS, if that makes sense. I can see inside front. I have an access to all the CASs, so I can see exactly where a student's got seats reserved. Questions about traffic rules? I know that gets a little confusing for you, and some students think if they've got one seat reserved, they have to give that up to take another one, but you don't. Up until, it's usually April or May, you can hold multiple seats.
Is there a website for PA as well?
Just do PA traffic rules.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yep. Every school also has a strategy or a policy about refunding your deposit. So every school is different. Some will refund it. Most of the time, your deposit actually goes to your tuition that first year.
Just a question, how much does it use the classrooms every seat?
The most we've seen is $3,000 at Idaho and Burrell for medical. The least is dental is 100. MD schools are 100. I'm not sure about PT, pharmacy, a couple hundred. Every school is different. Yeah.
Deposits, right?
Deposit. Max is 3,000 that we've seen. Yeah. Okay, how many of you have been on StreetDoctor.net? Not that many of you? What? Okay. So, a word of caution, but a word of encouragement to use StreetDoctor.net. It's a student portal that's good for medical, dental. I don't think PA is represented on there. All the disciplines, there's a pre-forum, there's once you get into grad school forums on there. There's also a site on there that has school-specific types of things. So some students will even put what their interview was like on there. It is a good place to go to find out when schools are starting to interview. You'll get a pulse of, okay, so-and-so got an interview request from this school. I know they're sending out interview requests. Okay, I know they're sending out acceptances because I hear that on there. But be cautious of what you hear on there. Remember that it's an open forum. And also remember that admissions directors are on this forum as well. So if somebody starts telling what the questions were in the interview, guaranteed the admissions committee is going to change up those questions. Okay, so don't prepare just for questions that are limited to, you think you might get because somebody on StreetDoctor.net said they got asked those questions. Okay, you should be preparing for a wide gamut of question types. Okay. But it can be a really good tool. A lot of times students will come in our office and they'll say, I haven't heard from this school at all. I'm just wondering what's going on. And we'll say, if you looked on the thread for this school to see what they're doing. So it's a good way to get a pulse on that school. Okay, so it is a resource for you. What questions have you got about this? I think we're also going to be talking about the Casper system today. Is somebody presenting on that? Because I know nothing about that.
Yeah, well, I don't either.
When is the second workshop?
Who went over?
Oh, the second
I know a
interview
little
boot
bit,
camp?
but
We have not set that up yet.
just what's
Casey
gonna cover it
Shakespeare, our
all
staff
right
member at Dixie, is the one that set that first one up. We were kind of amazed at how quickly it filled
Casey
up.
has a document.
We only had like 35
Document on
seats in it.
I read through that yesterday.
So we'll be adding that. We'll email you guys as soon as
I don't know anything about
If you
it.
did not get access to
I didn't look at
the
that.
Google shared
Yeah.
folder that
Just
has
know
all these
basics, but
presentations and things in it,
What you guys all know.
email Casey and then she can make sure that you're on that list. Yeah.
So I have a question about letters of recommendation.
I think it's-
Texas,
For the students, it's
TMB
right.
SAS is very,
I don't think so. I did see four.
they're telling us that they have to have a letterhead and they have to have a signature. If they don't have that, that will be,
Most of your letters should have
they
letterhead and
should, it's not something
signature.
I should worry too much about. Most people know.
Most people know that. Yeah. I would never send a letter not on a letterhead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What,
Is it common if you are put on a wait list for school and then you retake your entrance exam and score higher, will they often accept
I
you
didn't see where.
then?
Could be, you can update that as soon as, yeah. Even though your updated score may go onto your CAS, you still want to contact that school and say, oh, look, by the way, I just got a new score. Yep. Other questions about how this works? Are we not going to talk about Casper? We'll talk about Casper later. Casper is an exam. Have any of you looked to see about Casper? So some of the schools are using Casper now as a pre-screening tool for you. We have some resources about Casper in our office. There are some online. Just be aware that the interview process now is getting to be a little more cumbersome than it ever was before. It used to be your supplemental, you get a call, go to an interview, it's a casual interview, maybe you and a faculty member and a student. It is not like that anymore. Now, there are multiple pre-screening tools being utilized, okay? So Casper is one of those tools. I think it's across the disciplines that some schools selectively are using it. So just be aware, Casper is a pre-screening tool that you will need to do for some of your schools. There's not a pass-fail. It's not like your entrance exam. It just gives them an idea a little bit more about who you are. And then some schools, our dear own University of Utah Medical School, will say to you, for your secondary and supplemental, we want you to do a video interview, okay? So that video interview, first of all, do not do that at home on your laptop if you have spotty Wi-Fi. Feel free to come in our office. You can use our office, our computer, our cameras, where you've got a better connection in a professional setting. Make sure you are dressed professionally for that video interview. It is timed. Many of these are timed, so you may want to practice ahead of time and be prepared for that. So having some mock interviews done before you do that video interview is what you want to do.
Can I
Yeah.
add some to it? So
Oh,
I
yeah.
did go to I went to a training, we went to a conference and they talked about Casper, and so that was one of the sections we talked about. So there will be 12 sections on the Casper. By the way, it's something that you can't be prepared for because they're going to be what they're looking for to see if you're a good fit. They're going to be testing you on your communication skills, your ethical skills, things of that nature. And it's like Rita said, who you are. It's not something you can really prepare for. So you'll have 12 sections. Each section will be 5 minutes timed, and you will have 3 scenarios that you will be asked for. So they're going to be asking you questions on what you would do in a specific situation, and then you're going to write it down. Be timed. You'll be in a room. You'll have you'll need to have on your computer a camera, and you'll be. By the way, when you start, you'll have to show your ID and things like that. And so every time you take the test, they want to know it'll be you, and no opportunity for outside help and things of that nature. So it's not a hard test. It's just something they want to know who you are. Okay.
Any other comments that you guys have about
There's a handout in the application workshop folder that I shared with everybody.
Okay.
If you don't have access to that, let me know, but I thought I shared it with everyone yesterday, so.
Yeah, and I'm just getting up the webpage about it.
It's pretty self-explanatory. It's not anything crazy to be, freaked out about. It's really more of like an ethical type of test was how Emily described it for PA.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you see here, it says, backed by more than 12 years of academic research, Casper effectively screens for people's skills by using an online situational judgment test.
Yeah.
So if you have questions about, okay, what do you think? Come see us. I always caution students, there's a standardized question that usually comes up about cheating, and it manifests itself in several different ways in an interview. And it's basically screening you to see how you deal with someone who is cheating and you know they're cheating, right? Could be in the school environment, it could be in your clinical rotations, it could be in the professional environment. What do you think you would do in a situation like that? Oh, come on. I'm going to get this question in 6 months. What are you going to do, Gavin? You work in a clinical setting.
Yeah, I think it's important that the individual first and explain to them what they're doing. At that point, if they don't, I think it's good to go see a supervisor or someone above them, because you don't want to get a accomplice either.
Anybody agree? Disagree?
Yeah, I think it's good to give them a chance to make it right on their own, but let them know that you're not going to let it fly either. So just say I know what you're doing, and you should go to the superior, whatever that is.
So what if it's your best friend and they beg you not to? They're going to get tossed out of med school if you turn them in. Are you going to be bold enough to turn them in?
Nothing paid for my tuition.
I don't think that's a decision that you have to make. I think that person already decided. They already decided to cheat or to be unethical or
Yeah.
to dangerous practice. That's not really your decision.
So remember, one of those top skills and characteristics we talked about yesterday was integrity. Integrity in the healthcare profession is utmost. And so if you're answering a question about that, you can just say, integrity is a big part of this career field. I think I would have to do the hard work and turn this person in if you knew, because they're diluting and degrading your profession. And that might be hard if it's your best friend. If it's someone you've been struggling with, are you bold enough to do that? So you may get pushed on those boundaries, Other ethical questions where, they're not black and white, they're gray. We always encourage you. Who's taking biomedical ethics? I highly recommend that class to prepare for interviews because at least it allows you to walk through your thought process in an ethical situation. You may not know the right answer, and everybody's afraid of the abortion question or something like that. There really is no black and white answer. It's your ability to critically think through the pros and the cons. Okay? If I were to ask you, is healthcare a right or a privilege? Okay? You better be able to explain both sides of it. Okay? I always ask you to, understand the difference between morals and ethics. Okay? Morals is your personal code of conduct, but ethics is a much bigger framework that governs your profession. Okay, so do a little research or come and see us. We've got some great books about that. If you don't have time in your coursework to take biomedical ethics, that may be something you need to read about this summer, to do a little bit more digging on yourself so that you're better prepared for some of these interview questions. So use the resources we have. Let's see, what else? Also at the University of Utah, when you go to the University of Utah Medical School, you will not have a one-on-one interview with anybody. Okay, they have, you have your video interview that you do online. Then you have MMI. MMI, and we're going to be doing this at the boot camp. MMI is multiple mini interviews. So it's like speed dating. There are scenarios on a door. You have a couple minutes to read that scenario. You walk in, and you have an interviewer in there. They are the one that is interviewing 20 people that day. So they're evaluating your answer with everyone else's answer. Okay? So it's a very difficult one to prepare for. But just practice interviewing. The literature shows that those types of interviews are more objective then the type of interview that you might have with a casual get to know you kind of thing, where you can actually, if you have good people skills, or as I used to say, good sociopath skills, you can schmooze somebody, and it's not as objective. Then at the University of Utah, they also have another exam where they give you like an iPad, and it's kind of moral ethical problem solving as well. You will never actually have a one-on-one interview with a person who will flesh out your application at the University of Utah Medical School. It's just the way they do things nowadays. And every school has a gradient of that at some point. You do not know what type of interview you're going into unless they tell you or studentdoctor.net tells you. Okay? Questions about interviews, getting ready for interviews?
I just have a question about like a specific type of interview. It's a group interview with
Okay.
other students.
Yeah.
And kind of the position that you would take, like a more aggressive, hey, this is me, like step out in front, more laid back, kind of let other
Yeah.
people talk, only when you're, but what kind of?
And so to clarify, it is, they could have a group interview. So you could be with 2, 3, 4 other applicants, candidates, and there's a team that's reviewing you. I've seen the scenario be they give you a problem to solve, they give you a case study, and they want to see how you react in that case study. So what are they looking for? Teamwork. What else are they looking for? Leadership. What else are they looking for? Arrogance. Okay? Y'all know that one person in your study group that you don't want there. Okay? Because they know it all. So they're looking for how you fit in. What's going to be your role in this class they're seeing? Okay? So you have to be very cautious. You have to have a fine balance. You can't just be the person that sits back, obviously. And yet you know you're going to have that super aggressive person, that gunner that's there. So you got to moderate your behavior. Is that?
Yeah.
It stinks. It really stinks. Other interview types of things. We hear so you know we're all here. Our office is here because we have AHEC. In fact, if you have a question on your application that says, "Have you been a member of an AHEC program?" you're going to check yes. You guys all know us as Rural Health Scholars, but the federal grant that helps support our program is called AHEC, Area Health Education Center. The goal is to pipeline rural underrepresented students into healthcare careers. So we are AHEC. If your application says, have you been in an AHEC program, check yes. Okay? My PI on my federal grant is at the University of Utah in the Department of Family and Preventive Medicine. He sits on the selection committee for the University of Utah Medical School. He tells me all the time, your applicants don't interview well. He knows who's coming from Southern Utah. He sits on the selection committee. Okay? He says your applicants do not interview well. They don't understand the depth that they need to about certain topics. Okay? So, that's why we are creating the boot camp. This is the first year we're doing the interview boot camp. We need to do a better job at giving you the opportunities to develop your interview skills. That being said, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You guys got to take advantage of the services we're providing. Okay? Yeah.
I know we'll talk about it in the boot camp, but is that because we're talking too much about things or talking too little about things?
It's that sometimes our students, and I get what he means about this. He sees BYU students who he calls clones, and University of Utah students, other students. But I truly believe it has to do with our rural demographic of our students. Students who come here, how many of you know somebody, and I'm not going to make you identify, how many of you know somebody who says, I came to SUU because it was cheap? Oh, every one of you should be raising your hand. You know somebody who came here because it was cheap, right? Huh?
That was me, I did.
That was you. Yeah. Okay? We're a cheap school, right? What does that tell you about our student population? Our student population is working. Our student population doesn't have time to sit around and read books about healthcare. Okay? You guys are barely making it through classes and work and your families and all this stuff. You don't have the luxury that some students do to dig into these topics, to carry out intensive interviews and things like that. It's hard for you guys to do that sometimes. Our average student, right? so they don't have the depth. They scratch the surface and they look like box checkers. They check the boxes. So, and we're happy to chat more with you and how you can develop those skills, but you've got to use our services. You've got to come and ask us about those things. Got to do mock interviews, things like that.
One of the others I heard that a lot of interview candidates struggle with is like understanding healthcare. All the basic ideas and foundations of how the U.S. healthcare system works.
Exactly.
A lot of interview candidates break down.
Oh, they read our articles.
Yep. So we have a book group. We had a book group this semester called My Own Country by Voorhees. I highly recommend that book. If you can quote some of these books, just read one or two about what's going on in our healthcare system. We have a ton of them in our library. Hopefully now's an okay time for you to pick up a couple of those books. We're happy to share with you what our favorites would be that you should be reading to better at least discuss something in your interview. Okay. A little knowledge is better than no knowledge. Good. Other questions? Okay. What else are we doing this morning?
I think we're going to take a break and then we'll...
School selection in a little bit.
Yep.
But we'll take a break right now. And if you have any questions or want us to look at any of your stuff, let us know.
Did you swipe it?
I did not swipe anybody.